Hi friends, welcome back or welcome if you are new. My name is Miley and today we're going to jump straight into it with our May wrap up. In the last month, I read 6 books total. 5 of those were from a physical TBR. It was a really slow reading month for me because I was just really busy with my move and just being stressed and tired. But the month did start with a bang because the very first book that I read was The Wall by Marlene Fußhofer, and this was my first official 5-star read of the entire year of 2025. So this follows a woman who, in the middle of her cabin getaway in the Austrian mountains, wakes up and finds that she cannot leave the premises. Her cabin is surrounded by an invisible wall that surrounds her from the rest of the world. She's not sure what caused the townspeople to slump over and never wake up again, and she doesn't know what to do about the wall, but she only knows that she has to survive. I love a literary dystopian novel that is quiet, introspective, and mundane. I love an end-of-world setting in which the characters dredge on, existing, and surviving, because truly, what else is there to do? In The Wall, we follow our main character as she navigates the land that surrounds her. She tills the soil, she plants beans and potatoes, she makes hay, she feeds the dog and the cat and the cow. She makes a life for herself despite the circumstances, and I found it so beautiful. So much of the imagery of the forest and the mountains have stayed in my mind. I love the slow survival story as we saw our narrator face each new day with bravery and resilience. What stood out for me in the novel was the strong relationships between the narrator and her animals. She cared for them in such a loving way, worried for them, and completely devoted herself to them because she needed them as much as they did to survive. And it honestly made me cry at times at how special their connection was. The ending definitely made me cry, and I was at a cafe when I was reading this ending. It was so silly too because I knew what was going to happen since it's foreshadowed, but I think it hit harder because of the long journey that I went through with our main character and her animals. Each page is felt, each emotion, and every day is stretched out. The writing truly is so captivating that I came to love the animals as much as our main character did. So the end really did shock me, and it left me in pieces. The Wall had the honor of being my first 5-star of the year, and I couldn't be happier about it. It's a book that I see myself revisiting time and time again. The next book that I read was on my Kindle, and it was Mending Bodies by Han La Chu. This was an anticipated release for me, and this is set in Hong Kong, where conjoinment surgery is quite common. The government is strongly advocating for humans to be fused together with the promise that it will bring personal fulfillment. It's basically taking the phrase, my better half, quite literally. In this, we follow a young student who is writing a thesis paper on the history of conjoined individuals. Her paper explores how conjoined individuals were seen as abominations in early time periods. And I understood that she herself was against the Conjoinment Act, but she eventually goes through the procedure herself. I thought that this was a fascinating and morbid concept, and I really enjoyed the what ifs of this particular society. But it's such a shame that most of what I liked was buried under one surreal subplot after the other. At one point, things just stopped making sense for me, and the kooky array of characters that our MC encounters got under my skin. There were some thought-provoking moments in this book, sure, but honestly, I think that a lot of it went over my head. After that, I read Some Strange Music Draws Me In by Griffin Hansberry. I really enjoyed this one as well. This was my second favorite read of May because I love a coming of age, and there is huge bonus points if it happens to be queer as well. This is set during a small rural American town in the summer of 1980. We follow Max when he was formerly known as Mel. She's a preteen who's coming to terms with her sexuality and identity that ultimately comes to a clash with the fury of the townspeople and her family. The story really sets off once enigmatic, sexy, and cool as hell Sylvia rolls into town. And Sylvia has an aura that Mel just can't resist. This gets her ultimately in trouble more than once. Sylvia has a swagger and a confidence that Mel wants for herself, and when Mel finds out that Sylvia is actually a trans girl, Mel has a lot of questions to ask herself. I love reading from Mac's perspective, first as a lost 13-year-old girl in the 80s, and then later as a trans man in 2009, as he's looking back at his earlier years. The rawness in which it explores gender, identity, sexuality, queerness. There is everything of that uncertain times that comes with being a teenager, the longing for knowing who you are, the desperation of needing a role model, the being in love with a girl best friend, the hating your small conservative town, the hating your parents and feeling misunderstood. I also love the setting in this, the green, hazy summer of 1980. It was honestly so transporting to imagine hot and sticky summers, riding bikes with your best friend, and doing fuck all because you're bored. There's a bit of nostalgia in here for me despite never having experienced an internet-free summer, but it reminded me of innocent games that kids will invent, the games where you steal kisses in lakes and behind forests in your backyard. All the while, though, there is this sense of violence throughout the entire book. There is a violence brewing at every corner from strangers and people that Max knows. Ultimately, it comes to a clash towards the end, and I honestly read a lot of those scenes with my heart in my throat. And with only about 900 ratings on Goodreads, I need this to be on more people's radar. If you're looking for queer fiction, and more specifically trans fiction, some strange music draws you in, it's just the type of book for you. Then I read the most confusing book in the world. This was Brother Bronte by Fernando A. Flores. It's a dark, psychedelic dystopian in which books are illegal and tyrants rule. This book has a lot going on, so stay with me. Firstly, you have to understand the setting that this book is set in. So you have this town of Three Rivers, Texas. It's a small town that's been bought to ruin by tyrants and tech conglomerates. A certain Paulo Henry Crick has risen to power and planted a fish cannery factory. This was promised to bring fortune to Three Rivers, but instead it accelerated climate change and forces mothers, and only mothers for some reason, to do grueling work at the factory. Secondly, there's the characters, right? We have Neftali and Prosperina, the heroines of the novel, who we are introduced to in part 1. And we understand that they are immigrants or daughters of immigrants. They remember a time in which Paulo Henry Crick wasn't in control, and in a world where book shredding are ran by small neighborhood gangs, literally made up of 10-year-old boys, Neftali and Prosperina are often the target of harassment because they're some of the few who can not only read but also own books. There's a whole other array of like wacky things that happen in this novel. There you have a tailless Bengal tiger, an underground tamale organization, a volcano eruption that leaves the world bleak and gray, and an attempted assassination. There's honestly a lot of things to unpack in this novel, and I can't say that I liked all of it. I was left quite unsatisfied at how the blurb promised one thing and it ended being a whole different other thing. It's not the usual dystopian that I like either because it's not quiet. In fact, it's quite loud, but I found that I didn't have anything interesting to say despite that loudness. Then we got If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. This story is one that I am quite familiar with because I had seen the movie a couple years prior, but I was still very excited to finally be able to read the book and sort of like compare and contrast between the movie and the book, I guess. Both are equally gorgeous, I will say that right now. I also wanted to finally read another James Baldwin and get back into his writing, which is absolutely gorgeous. This follows a young Black couple, Bonnie and Tish. They are childhood friends who have always held a tenderness for each other. Now older, they're engaged, looking for a place to live, and they're just ready to start the next step in their lives and live together happily and peacefully. That is until Bonnie is accused of a crime that he did not commit, however, and he is sentenced to jail. This book is honestly so beautiful. I was constantly floored by how soft yet impactful the writing is. There's so many stunning quotes in here. Let me read you guys one or two. Time. The world tolled like the bells of a church. Bonnie was doing time. Somewhere in time, Bonnie and I had met. Somewhere in time, we had love. Somewhere, no longer in time, but now, totally at time's mercy, we loved. Like, tell me that's not the most beautiful thing you've ever heard in your life. Like, wow. The themes of love, family, resilience, and being Black in America were absolutely beautiful in this novel. I would say, though, that the only thing I didn't really like about this was the end. Like, I know there was a very slim chance of a happy ending, and That's not what I wanted. I just didn't like the abrupt ending. Like the book just finished and there's like no conclusion at all. Like we can assume, that they didn't have a happy ending, but I don't know. I just really liked Bonnie and Tish and I really liked seeing their story. And I could have read more pages of this if it meant just having some sort of conclusion. But yeah, I think that's my only qualm with this. Just that it's just a little bit too short. I could have easily read like 200 pages more of this. I am so excited to read more James Baldwin now. I know that I've read Giovanni's Room by him, but that was quite a while ago. So I would love to reread that because I don't remember that book that much. So if you guys have any other recommendations of what other James Baldwin books I could read, please comment them down below. So apparently this is going to be quite a short video because we're already on the very last book that I read in May, which was The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante. This follows Leda, a middle-aged woman who's found herself alone for the first time since having her daughter some 20-ish years ago. The daughters are currently in Canada with their father, and so Leda's summer is wide open. So she decides to go to the coast and spend the next couple of weeks reading and writing. However, she becomes obsessed and entangled with this family, but more specifically, the young mother and daughter. And it is while observing the young family that Leda starts to look back at her own young motherhood, raising her daughters. And as for the people who think that Elena Ferrante is a man, I don't think they can say the same thing after reading The Lost Daughter. There's just no way a man can write about the topic of motherhood and womanhood in the same profound, messy, unfiltered, and raw nature in which it is depicted in here. The mothers of Elena Ferrante's worlds are neither good or bad. It's not a black and white thing for Ferrante. She's more curious to explore what would propel someone to do this thing or that other unspeakable thing. The Lost Daughter truly is just about the complex experience of being a mother. While this wasn't my favorite Elena Ferrante, I was still very glad to have read this and to be back in Elena Ferrante's world and to be back in her own musings about being a mother, being a person, partner, being a wife. It's all just so very interesting. I just really like the way that she explores all of these terms. So that is all the books that I read in May. I think very quickly before we go, I'm going to give you guys a little DNF section because I don't remember the last month that I did this. In the month of May, I DNF Make Me Famous by Mal Ventura. I'm really sad about this one because I was so excited to read it, but I could not do it. I really don't like books about musicians, and this is all about this young woman whose obsession is with fame. She's determined to become a singer and she eventually gets there, but it's a boring story for me and I just did not care to see each and every little step that she had to do to become a singer. It read like a very self-indulgent memoir. I just did not find anything of that I liked in Mal Ventura's previous novel, My Husband. There was nothing quick or sharp or witty or fast-paced or clever about this. I was just really, really bored. In May, I also DNF'd Strangers I Know, and I'm also a little bit sad about this one because I remember telling you guys in my last vlog that I was quite excited to start this one and that I was liking what I was reading so far, but I came in here expecting a book about a dysfunctional family, and so that's what was given me at the very beginning. But then 100 pages in, I was just reading about our main character, now older and living in London and trying to make a life for herself in London. I just did not care. There was also quite a lot of pop culture references in this, which will take me out of the story. Not what I was looking for, so I decided to set it down and maybe I'll try again some other time. Another book that I DNF was Shark Heart. This was at the very beginning of May and I was reading this for book club and I just could not do it. I'm happy that other people liked it, but I just did not like it. I did not like the writing style. I did not like the characters. I also did not feel anything for the book. Like, the book is supposed to be very emotional because it's about a young couple who only after a year of marriage, the husband goes through some weird transformation. He starts to become a great white shark, basically. We're seeing a couple struggle with this new reality for themselves. It was supposed to be very emotional, but I just could not get into it because it felt like I didn't know the two main characters who were supposedly in love. Like, I didn't feel their connection, so I couldn't feel anything that they were feeling. And then around the 200-page mark, he becomes a great white shark, and for me, the book was over. I did not need to read 200 pages more or whatever else happened. I just didn't care. So I just set it down. I need an emotional connection, especially if it is a tragic love story. Another book that I set down was Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. I'm not too sad about this one because this is a book that I read before. This was gonna be my second reread of this book. And I was inspired to pick this up again because I recently had reread Acts of Desperation by the same author. And so I was really inspired to reread Ordinary Human Feelings because I remember when I read it last year, I did not really like it. It just did not work for me. And so I thought, let me give it a second chance. I'm in the mood to read some more Megan Nolan. Maybe now that a year later, I'll feel differently about it. I was reading it in between a lot of other books. It was also the month that I was just really busy. And so it just fell through the cracks and I just abandoned it. And then when I tried to come back to it, it was a month later since I had started it. I just could not remember anything that happened. I just found myself not caring yet again. So I set this one down. Maybe I'll try again in the future, but for now, Act of Desperation is the best novel that Megan Nolan has ever written and probably her very best. And so that is the end of this wrap up, you guys. That is all the books I read and DNF in the month of May. I'm really hoping for a retribution month in June and that I read at least double of what I read in May. I really just want to read every single day and read all day and just like really devour books. Let me know what you guys read in May. Let me know what your favorite book of May was. Mine definitely was The Wall, but Some Strange Music Draws Me In is a very close second. I can't stop thinking about that book. Don't be surprised if at the end of the year you see it on my favorites list. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this week. I'll see you guys very, very soon.